All right, and now a little bit of a marine ecology crash course. If I'm doing my job correct, at the end of this session, you will be able to tell me why the ocean is of vital importance, why the smallest things are the most important, and why everything is interconnected. And we're also going to have this super difficult test at the end. No, just kidding. No, just kidding. Nothing's going to happen. So these three things you're going to take away later on. But let's first start looking at this satellite picture of planet Earth. But I said planet Earth, but if I look at this picture, isn't it a bit inappropriate to call it that way? Because everything that I'm seeing is blue. So planet blue would be actually better, right? If we look at it that way. Well, but if we then strip away the total volume of seawater, we end up with the total volume of hard substance, which is much, much bigger compared to the total volume of seawater, which you can see here. I know the screen was very, very, very small, but do you know what this tiny little dot is? Yeah? Sorry? No? Yes, yeah. Yeah, fresh water. Yeah, that's the total volume of fresh water we find on Earth. So only 2% of all the water we have on Earth is fresh water, so that means we should be very economical with its use, but also not only with the use of fresh water, also with our oceans. We need to be very careful. And why is that? I have like a little clip which summarizes all the vital services that the ocean provides us with. And I would love you to look out for things that you are surprised about, that you didn't know of yet, so we can discuss that afterwards. There it comes. Yes, that was it. So anything that you were surprised about or you didn't know of yet? The medicine? Yeah. They actually use, for instance, some part of crab in order to find a medicine for cancer research. Yeah, very interesting research going on there. Anything else? Everything was known?
There were some additives in drinks.
Yeah.
What were there?
Additives and?
In drinks, I don't know. You saw some sparkling drinks, and it says additives.
That's if I'm correct, in food. You can find some, things from the ocean. Can be plants, can be also, leftovers of animals.
Like plankton or something?
Well, actually, even you find things like shark residues in cosmetics, for instance.
But is it by accident or on purpose?
No, it's on purpose.
What do they do? Those shark thingies?
Huh?
What do they do in the?
If I'm correct, I'm not a pro in in that cosmetic area, but I think it makes the creams and stuff smoother.
more common. A lot of seaweed is used to make our food more tasty.
What did you say?
Marine collagen as like supplement.
Yeah. Yeah. You can also find a lot of omega-3 supplements that are derived from algae as a vegan option for omega-3. Yeah. Something else before we continue? No? No? Okay. Well, then let's summarize it together. So food, nobody mentioned that. It's a pretty obvious one, but in terms of food security, in some nations, they heavily depend on protein deriving from sea. For instance, the Philippines, 70% of all protein comes from the sea. Then we have 80% of world trade. Rose already talked about that in the previous section, and 80% of it means that what you're sitting on, the table in front of you, probably came here via sea. Probably not assembled like that, but the parts of it came here on a ship. Also, oil, natural oil and natural gas, 30% of oil and 50% of natural gas is also derived from sea. And nobody mentioned that one. I'm curious, did you find that pretty obvious, or did you know about that? Yeah? See a lot of nodding. Yeah, I actually, when I got into marine conservation stuff, I found that pretty impressive, and I wasn't aware of that. That every second breath, if you look at it more figuratively speaking, comes from the sea. On paper, or in fact, it depends on, we are now probably inhaling more than 50% oxygen from the sea because we're closer located to the coast. But generally speaking, every second breath comes from the ocean. And also, maybe more obvious one, because nobody mentioned it, is climate regulation. So because nobody mentioned that as a surprising one, you probably all can tell me what we're looking at. Now I got you.
The currents. The undersea currents.
The sea currents?
Undersea currents.
Currents? Oh, currents, yeah. Yeah, currents.
That's how they went from Spain to they use them. I think so. That's the undersea current, right?
It's currents.
It's the discovery of when they discovered this, the American, the Spanish, they got actually current, and they went there. So if I'm correct, it's close to undersea currents.
There are also trade winds involved in that story, but there were also currents, but it's not necessarily completely this current.
Any
current?
any other thoughts? Okay. Well, we're looking at the Great Conveyor Belt, and that's a system of ocean circulations. And with that, actually, the ocean is regulating our climate. How does it work? We have these warm currents coming from the Caribbean, going alongside the coast of Europe, and somewhere in the north, the water is very cold, somewhere in the region of Greenland, close to the North Pole. And what happens there, the water that comes there, which is warm, partially freezes. Only fresh water freezes, so the remaining water gets saltier and colder. And saltier and colder water gets lighter or heavier? Heavier? Yeah, true. And so it sinks and pushes away the cold water which is already present in that area, creating this colder stream going down south. And by that, it regulates the climate. Sounds really abstract. To give you an example, we have the Netherlands somewhere here and Toronto somewhere here, so more or less same latitude. And we have a temperate sea climate in the Netherlands. So we get like mild, relatively mild winters and relatively mild summers. Whereas in Toronto, the temperatures in winter can reach up to -7 and they go up to 30 plus. So that's how climate regulation in a nutshell by the ocean works. Is that clear? More or less. Yeah, it's a crash course. If you have more questions.
Also use a day, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. But for now, I guess the main principle is clear. If you have, yeah.
There on the Great Pacific, does it really go like that? I mean, it doesn't go all the way to the Pacific side of America. Does it go around?
Yeah, we have, so because it's an ocean circulation system, we have multiple engines. And we have an engine here, here, and here. And one round to fulfill is 1,000 years. So it really goes all the way. But it takes like 1,000 years. Okay, then let's continue. So we have like the importance checked. You all know now why the ocean is super important to us. So let's look more into the ecology part. And I'm wondering, do you know what we're looking at? All these annoying questions, I know. But do you know by any chance what this is? Sorry? Plankton, yeah? Okay, now the expert question, do you know which kind of plankton? No, yeah, that was a mean one. It's phytoplankton. We're going to look at the differences between the planktons later on a bit more, but it's phytoplankton, it's green. That's how you can recognize it. And plankton is translated to drifter. So we look at everything that is not able to swim against the currents with its own strength as plankton or drifter. And the phytoplankton is amazing. Why? It can produce oxygen, as we already talked about. Every second breath we take comes from the ocean. That is thanks to this little body here. And it also uses CO2 by doing so. And therefore, it is the #1 of primary producers. So it provides food to the rest of the food chain and therefore builds the foundation of every food chain we have. So pretty amazing. And how does it do it? I'm going to take you really, really quick back to biology class in high school. Everyone probably still remembers more or less how photosynthesis works on land. So we have some sunlight, carbon dioxide. We use water and nutrients. By that, we produce sugars. And as a byproduct, there's also oxygen that's being produced. Same thing happens with phytoplankton in the ocean. Same principle. Yeah? Clear to everyone? Questions? Max, you're laughing? No. Okay, good. Well, like I said, that makes the phytoplankton #1 of primary producers. Thanks to this little body, we have all the oxygen we have coming from the ocean. And now imagine you all know SpongeBob SquarePants, probably. If you are this little mean, evil plankton, where would you want to live? In the upper 200 layers, or maybe in the lower 200 meters and everything that's going down to the deep sea?
In a restaurant trying to find the recipe.
Sorry?
In a restaurant trying to find the recipe.
Okay.
If I was that one.
Okay, yeah, all right.
What serious answers?
Serious answers?
I said upper level because of the sunlight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, any other thoughts? Or are you all agreeing with that? Yeah, nodding? Yeah. So if we are plankton, we want to live in the upper 200 layers because even under the best circumstances, sunlight penetration goes down to 200 meters, but below that, it's pretty dark because there's no sunlight. But that also means everything that lives below those 200 meters is highly dependent on whatever happens in those 200 meters and the primary production there, because there is almost nothing to be found. Yeah? Okay. So we have a food chain. I already mentioned it. At the basis, we have the phytoplankton. Then we have the zooplankton, small fish and big fish. I already asked this mean question. What are the differences between the specific sorts of plankton? We have the animal plankton. That's the phytoplankton here. Green, like I said, easy to remember. And then we have the zooplankton. And when we talk about zooplankton, we talk about animal plankton. And there we also have two sections again. It gets even more complicated, but I have pictures so it helps. So on the left, we see a codepod, and a codepod stays that small for forever. So only a few millimeters, very well seen under a microscope, but with our bare eyes, pretty difficult. And then on the other side, we have a lobster larvae. And I don't know if anybody already ate lobster, but you probably do sometimes. They start their lives looking like this. So super tiny, and at some point they grow up and they're so big that they can satisfy you. So those two, and the distinguishing between those two is very important for later, so I'll test you later on. And then, yeah, small fish and big fish. Okay? Then, actually, I was lying. It's not a food chain, but it gets even more complicated because it is a pyramid. And why is that? Because every level only hands on 10% of the energy to the next level when being eaten. So that goes all the way to the top. 90% is being used by the specimens in that very level themselves. Any ideas for what? 90%. What could an organism use it for? What do you think those 90% of energy are going to? What does an organism use them for, the energy? Human? To move? I hear you.
The plants will still move.
But it goes in a better direction? Hmm? Human? What do you mean by that?
Because they use a lot of energy in the ocean and
But like the animal itself, if you look at phytoplankton, why would it need energy and for what? Yes, yeah. Reproduction, regulation of body temperature, like daily business, basically. So only 10% is left over to be handed on to the next level. Yeah? Now I have a little bit of a math exercise to see if you really got it. So we start with 1,000 kilograms of phytoplankton, yeah? And that's being eaten by zooplankton. How many kilograms of zooplankton can live off these 1,000 kilograms of phytoplankton? 100. Amazing. And then, next level, again, only 10% is being handed on. 10, yeah, and on the top, 1 kilogram. Amazing, you passed the test. So that means we have 1,000 kilograms of phytoplankton, and that is just enough to sustain 1 kilogram of big fish. That also explains why we have much more smaller organisms living in the ocean than bigger ones, because they need a lot of energy and a lot of steps in the food chain in order to get that energy. Yeah? I see some question marks, no?
Well, the question that was thinking is, then we, for human consumption, should only eat the small fish.
Yeah.
Because why should you want to eat a big fish if the kilogram is divided by 10 in terms of food?
In terms of food, we are not part of that food chain. I mean,
no, but if we eat fish,
yeah.
although if we can eat, we can choose to eat 10 kilograms of small fish.
Yeah.
And if it's the same amount of in the food chain consumed energy as 1 kilograms of big
fish, yeah.
Then we should only eat.
We should.
Actually, little fish. Fish is the only form of animal protein that we eat where we're not eating the top of the food chain. So it's actually the most fish we eat are not the big fish, but the smaller fish. That's what we do. That's exactly right.
Yeah, well, but we had this week we had the talk about sharks and whales and eating them, and I think there's a pretty solid argument why not.
Yeah.
That's a good conversation starter.
Yeah. We can discuss that during the social dinner because there's like more to it than only that, but it's a valid point, yeah. Okay, let's continue. We also have bacteria, and they make it a cycle. So let's repeat. We have a food chain. Actually, it's a food pyramid because of the 10% energy rule. And then because of the bacteria, it's actually a cycle. And then we also have viruses. Sorry, first explaining. Sometimes I assume I have biologists in front of me. So bacteria is what happens. Like of every level, there's specimens dying at some point. And the bacteria, they use the organic waste and the dead organisms and make nutrients out of it. And the nutrients, like we learned, are used in the photosynthesis, and then the whole cycle starts again because the phytoplankton uses that and so on. So that makes it a cycle. And then the viruses, they also have an important role. And I'm wondering, do you know what it is? Sorry?
What's the virus or what's the role?
What is the role of the virus in this whole system?
To kill the fish.
To kill, yeah?
So the bacteria can find the whole system.
Yeah, that's basically correct. So the virus actually speeds up the whole process because the virus makes a host sick, eventually causing it to die or die faster. And that provides the cycle with organic waste and dead organisms way quicker than it usually would. So yeah, it's actually a catalyst to this whole system. All right, then we have, let's imagine we have this teaspoon filled with seawater, so around 5 milliliters of seawater. What do you think, how many bacteria do we have? To check, I'm gonna spoil. Viruses.
No,
Phytoplankton. Sorry, phytoplankton. Otherwise, I'm gonna spoil. Phytoplankton is first on the slide. So.
And 1 teaspoon of water.
Yeah.
5 milliliters.
Why do you think that? Well, I mean, we're near the beach. No.
100,000. I don't know.
Who bids more?
It can be
5
more.
million?
Yeah.
Okay.
I will be one.
A third bid. What do you think?
Let's go for 1 million, right in the middle.
What do you think here? Rafael, what do you think? A million, okay? All right. It is actually 500,000. Then we have bacteria, how much?
5 million.
5 million. Another one.
I'm doing the 10% rule.
Okay, 5 million.
1 million.
1 million, okay? This is actually more than 5 million. Yeah, and now the viruses, a lot. Viruses, and it's 5 milliliter of seawater.
It depends from which state.
But like on average. More than 10 million? Everyone okay with that bit?
Here comes my biological knowledge. I don't know if a virus or a bacteria is bigger or virus is smaller.
It's 50 million viruses. But, okay, this is equal to 75 million blue whales in weight. But I don't want you to stop because we all, I think, probably want to have a dip in the Black Sea at some point, and I don't want you to not do this because of me. So why do we think that these viruses are okay in the water and we swallow them and we still survive? Why don't they? Yeah, why don't we die?
Because of our immune system.
Because of the salt? I don't know.
Well, it's actually way simpler than that. A virus that is supposed to make a seal sick is not host specific to us, so it's not going to make us sick. Yeah, so we can. Yeah, so they are not meant to make us sick. So we can still go in the sea, swallow some seawater, not too much, but a little bit, and we'll be fine. Yeah, because they are not meant to attack us. Yeah, but they also have an immune system. Okay. Yeah. So then it's up to the immune system if that breaks out or not.
Immune system is breaking down and then they get sick.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the same as with us. Yeah. Okay, so let's repeat. Food chain becomes a pyramid, becomes actually a cycle. And this is actually part of a whole food web. And this is a very, very simplified food web. You will figure in a second why I say that. And at the bottom, we have phytoplankton, as with every food web. And here we can see everything is interconnected, like I said in the beginning. This is why. A flatfish, for instance, is the food for a seal, but also can be eaten by a crab. So everything in this web is interconnected. And now we'll have a look at this one. Yeah. You thought the earlier one is simplified. This is still simplified. This is the simplified food web of the West Atlantic. So this is simplified, yeah. And I'm on paper not a marine biologist, but I think Rose can also barely make sense of all the lines and where they meet and where not. But one thing, if you were noticing, if you were paying attention, what is at the bottom? Ooh, 100 points for Max. Yes, so at every food web there is the phytoplankton as the basis of the food chain, or web in this sense. Okay, but if we look at this and we all agree it's super complicated, we probably also agree on that it's even more complicated if we think about what would happen if we take out one of the species. Think of the cod goes extinct. It's incredibly difficult even for specialists to know what's going to happen to the rest of the interplayers in that food web. Yeah, for instance, just as a...
Portugal should be in this food web then. Yeah. They forgot Portugal.
Go on. Yeah. So just to make you understand how incredibly difficult the connections in the marine ecology is. Caplin, that's also a species. I already feel your headache developing, so I'm just going to go further. So one more time, like I already said, with the food chain, then we have the pyramid with the phytoplankton in numerous numbers at the bottom and less of the big specimens on top. Viruses speed up the whole cycle, bacteria make it a cycle, and actually this is all part of a ginormous food web. Bam, there we are. We can breathe again. Any questions until here? No? Okay.
Very interesting.
We're not done yet, unfortunately. So we also have different systems. So let's have a look at them. So what we see here is the open ocean, and we also have coastal sea areas. What are the differences? I'm sure you know. Waves in which area?
Brushy waves and quiet sea.
Okay. So coastal areas are a bit wilder, you say, and open sea is a bit more calm, generally speaking. Yeah. Depth? Yeah. So open sea, naturally.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
Totally different fish and different kinds or different.
Yeah. Okay. Different species, different
It's going to be
diversity of.
probably you won't find one.
Maybe human interference.
Also, okay. Where would you expect to have more human interference, more human activities? Okay. Any other thoughts on this? What are the differences between the two systems? Actually, I'm going to pick on the thing that you said, depth. What is the deepest point of the ocean?
Mariana, no, how do you call it?
Yeah.
The trench.
Yeah. How deep is it?
We found plastic bag at the
Bottom.
deepest level. They went there with the camera, and it was a plastic bag.
Do you remember how deep that was?
11?
11. Yeah. Kilometers.
11 kilometers.
Yeah. And an average of depth is around 3.7 kilometers. So yeah. So yeah, definitely deeper than the coastal areas. Okay, then again, if you are the phytoplankton again, where would you want to live? Deep sea, or sorry, open ocean or coastal seas? On the right? Oxygen on the right, you said?
Both of them.
Okay.
I mean,
Elaborate on that?
well, in both cases, you said they're living at the top of the sea. So in both cases, they will live. There's no difference between choosing one another. If you where you can find the majority,
You want?
it could be either way.
Okay,
Because I
but
cannot understand why to choose to be near the beach, since it's more dangerous. When in the other side, you just do to live on the top.
okay, and dangerous in what sense?
From the human interference. I mean,
Okay,
I know what we're doing in the beach. Just
only humans?
and the waves that will just keep to go up.
I was thinking about clouds.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's true, but if clouds are forming, are there less clouds on the open sea and they're formed when they reach land?
So you'd say sunlight penetration can be
Less on open sea?
okay. Anything else? No? Okay, well, there is actually no right or wrong here. So, yeah, there are like multiple aspects, and like you said, consensus is we find phytoplankton in both regions. They differ in amount. So, in the open ocean, there's food scarcity, generally speaking. It's way deeper, like you said, and there's a swell. In comparison to the coastal areas where we have a lot of food available, it's shallower and there's a wave action and upwelling. I think yesterday Kor was asking about upwelling. Upwelling is when like there's a swell coming in and bringing all the nutrients up in front of a coastal area. And I actually looked up yesterday from Lisbon northwards, there's actually an upwelling region. So yeah, that's that. And well, if we look at what it does to the phytoplanktons in the way of adapting is, in the open oceans on the left, we have the small and very round ones. Why would they be small and very round if we think of this? Well, I'm gonna help. Well, if yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's easier to stay afloat, and also what is also one of the main reasons we have less food available. So you want to be smaller. Yeah. Okay, and also. Yeah. Okay. And then on the right, just gonna wrap it up because otherwise we'll get in trouble with the time. We have the large, bigger ones because there's a lot of food available, and also we have them in different forms like spikes and spirals in order to protect themselves from predators, because there's not only human interference but also predators available, because there's a lot of life in the coastal areas, whereas more of a, I would say you can compare it to a desert. All the dark areas are the areas with very low primary production, and the blue to red areas, there's a high productivity. So a lot of oxygen production, high levels of phytoplankton. All right, one more thing. What do you think? Long food chain, is that associated with the coast areas or with the open ocean? Do we have longer chains in the open ocean or shorter ones?
The biggest probably is outside in the ocean, because you can find the biggest fish. Well, there are more ships near the coast, but the biggest, like whales or the
But it's more about the levels, not about the size of the animal. So it's difficult, it's very counterintuitive. And for time's sake, I'm going to reveal it. So in the open ocean, we have those longer chains. Because like I said, we have way less food available. So if we look at the math exercise we did earlier, when we have 1,000 kilograms of phytoplankton, we can only sustain 1 gram of big fish. Whereas in the in the coast areas, we can sustain of the same amount of phytoplankton, 1 kilogram of big fish. It's a bit counterintuitive, I can imagine, but yeah, that's how it is. So you need way more levels in order to reach the same amount of energy. Yeah? Okay, we'll continue. Just a little wrapping it up. Summary. So we have the coast areas. There we have way more influence of land. We have way more nutrients available, way more food. Also upwelling. And then we also have larger phytoplankton in the coastal areas, and a high in primary production, if you think back of this map with the red areas, and we also have the shorter food chains. And all of that is the reason why the rules in coastal areas are much likely more stricter and different compared to the ones in the open ocean. Because generally speaking, there's more life available and it's a much more vulnerable system. Okay, well, that's, oh, sorry, almost it, before I get back to Rose. So we also have different ecosystems. What is the ecosystem? That's all the variables of non-living and living matters in that sense. So like we already talked about, temperature, weather conditions, waves, currents, whereas also living objects, living things like different kind of species, phytoplankton and zooplankton also take a role in that. That makes an ecosystem. And we have plenty of them. So we have coastal areas, this is where the sea meets land. We have intertidal areas, which are sometimes completely submerged, and sometimes they are flat and dry. And we have underwater regions, they speak for themselves. Maybe let's delve into one or two. Coral reefs, is a coral a plant or an animal? Somewhere in between, I hear. It's an animal. Yeah, it's actually an animal that lives in symbiosis with a little algae called Santonelle. And actually, yeah, it's really difficult to pronounce. And if it gets stressed, it leaves the coral, the polyps of the coral, and that's why they turn white. Because they can return, but if they don't return, we'll find these actually skeletons, which are out of carbon, how is it called? Calcium carbonate.
Calcium structure.
That is left, and you can sometimes find these pieces like washed up at the beach. And stress means rising sea temperature and whatnot, acidification. What else? It's okay?
Yeah, we'll get into more ecosystems during the...
For sake of time
Yeah.
and headspace. And Rose is going to continue.